Anywhere you might be. My name is Steve Leifman. I'm a recently retired judge from Miami-Dade County, Florida, and I'd like to welcome all of you to the 2025 Judges and Psychiatrists Leadership Summit. We appreciate everyone's attendance and are thrilled that you're able to join us today. We have a wonderful program and an opportunity to recognize some amazing psychiatrists and amazing judges who have just made a phenomenal contribution to the field and advancing an issue that is dear to all of us. First, I want to recognize our phenomenal partners, Council of State Governments, the American Psychiatric Association Foundation, and the National Center for State Courts. We are just so blessed to be able to work with an incredible group of individuals who have allowed us to have this phenomenal impact nationally. For those of you that are not familiar with the JPLI, that's the Judges Psychiatrist Leadership Initiative, we're now about 20 years old. We have over 4,000 judges and psychiatrists on our listserv that we stay in contact with on a regular basis. Our main vision is really to work to end the criminalization of mental illness by training judges around the country on how to identify individuals that may be dealing with these illnesses, how to talk to individuals that are dealing with these individuals, but equally important, how to work with the community to restructure and inform how the justice system deals with individuals. The impact untreated mental illnesses have on our entire justice system is quite remarkable. 70% of people in the jails today in the United States either have a serious mental illness, a substance use disorder, or both. So you can see the impact is quite large. Our goal, we have trained judges in more than half the states at this point, and our goal is to have 10,000 judges trained by the end of the decade. We're a little bit more than halfway there. We've trained about 5,000 judges at this point. We also have a training academy where we train judges and psychiatrists in our validated curriculum in states and put them out in our states to actually go do this amazing work. If you're interested in getting involved or becoming one of our teachers, you can reach out to the Council of State Governments, Justice Center, or the American Psychiatric Association Foundation. I'm assuming the National Center of State Courts must have a link on as well. And look for the JPLI and reach out to us. At this point, we're going to move into our program, but it's one of the major recognitions that we do tonight is in honor of one of our lost colleagues, Judge Goss. Most of us that are still involved with the JPLI had the privilege and honor to work with Judge Goss. And if you didn't know him, I just would like to tell you a few things about him. He was a wonderful and phenomenal human being. We lost him way too early. He was one of the early champions of the JPLI. He helped us set up our curriculum. He taught all over the country. He was from Georgia. He did amazing work in rural Georgia to make sure that individuals with serious mental health issues that came into the justice system had access to treatment. He was even featured in one of Rosalind Carter's books on mental health for the tremendous work that he did in Georgia and around the U.S. He was a quiet man. He was a man of few words, but when he spoke, he always had something incredibly important to say. And so we always listened. We miss him dearly. Personally, I think of him quite often and the impact that not only he had on my professional career, but on all of us, and the legacy that he has left that all of us work hard to fill his shoes. And that is a legacy of compassion, intelligence, thoughtfulness, and trying to create a judiciary that promotes and assures accessibility to treatment, not just punishment. Because we know that by making sure people that or who need treatment get it, makes us a much better system than being part of a system that continuously cycles individuals through these acute systems of care. And when we do this, we improve public safety, we save critical tax dollars, and equally important, if not more importantly, we offer individuals with these illnesses a life of hope and opportunity. And that's what Steve was all about. So with that, I would like to turn it over to Hallie Fader-Toe. Thank her for all of her efforts in helping us get organized today, and look forward to a robust and phenomenal program today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Judge Leifman. Before we get to the award ceremony, I wanted to invite Bill Fazekas to share a little bit about his relationship with Judge Goss and what brings him to. Bill is a member of the selection committee for the Goss Awards, and I'd like to welcome him to share his story and tell us a little bit about the man whose legacy we're honoring today.
Hi, my name is Bill Fazekas, and I live in Albany, Georgia, which is in Dougherty County, which is in the southwest corner of Georgia, the same city and county where Judge Goss lived and started his mental health treatment court. For the past 5 years, Hallie has asked me to be a member of the Judge Goss Award Selection Committee. So why include me, someone with no professional medical or legal credentials? Well, I'm here to briefly share my lived experience with a great man who touched and completely changed my life. I bring a connection to Judge Goss from someone who was an actual participant in his treatment court program. I started the program in 2006. I was struggling with drug use and deep depression and in and out of jail many times. I wasn't a model participant by any means. In fact, I struggled a lot. But I remember Judge Goss was always fair and knew exactly how to motivate me. And he provided that brutal honesty when I needed it most. I spent 3 years in his program and graduated in 2009. One of the things Judge Goss always suggested to graduates on graduation day was don't be a stranger. Come back and visit us. He said staying connected with treatment court would help our recovery and will show the current participants that the program works. So I took Judge Goss up on his offer. I kept coming back every week and volunteered for many years, helping out the program in any way I could. Judge Goss eventually hired me part-time as a peer support specialist, and now I'm a full-time case manager for that same treatment court. I'd like to share a quick story about Judge Goss's courtroom humor. One of our participants was in court standing before Judge Goss, expressing how much he liked the outpatient classes and groups. He kept using the word dope, D-O-P-E. He said, Judge Goss, all the classes and groups over there are dope. The teacher's dope, the whole program's dope. And Judge Goss didn't squash his enthusiasm and let him finish talking. When he had finished talking, Judge Goss just looked at him for a second, and then he said, "We need to find you a thesaurus." So that the whole courtroom cracked up, and I'll always remember that moment. And the I guess you call it dry humor that Judge Goss showed, but it was really funny. Finally, without a doubt, I've kept my recovery strong all these years. The guidance I got from Judge Goss was a big reason why, but also a huge motivation for me has always been to not ever want to disappoint Judge Goss. Next week on December 11th, I'll celebrate 18 years clean. I like to think of it as 18 years clean of not ever disappointing Judge Goss. I'm just one of Judge Goss's many success stories. There are so many more. Congratulations to all the winners tonight, and thank you for letting me share my thoughts about a man who meant so much to all of us and who I truly miss. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bill. I think your story is such a reminder about why all of us do the work that we do. And we very much appreciate your generosity in spending time with us to select the winners for the Judge Goss Award and then also coming again to share your story. Again, my name is Hallie Fader Tao. I have the honor to direct the Justice and Health work at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. I've had the privilege of working on the Judges and Psychiatrists Leadership Initiative since 2009, and I met Judge Goss when he was directing the lead judge in one of the model mental health courts through the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And as Judge Leifman said, he was always a somebody who was always willing to travel to be there. And we know it was not easy for him to get from Albany, Georgia to wherever the meetings were. And he always wanted to make sure that rural communities had a seat at the table in any policy or practice conversation, that we were always considering not just what worked well in certain communities, but what would work in many different communities. When we lost him to suicide, it quickly became a question not just of grief, but how to continue his legacy of investing in kind of going above and beyond to improve outcomes for people with behavioral health needs who become involved in the criminal justice system. And in partnership with people like Bill, Chief Justice Michael Boggs, who was then the Chief Justice of the Georgia Supreme Court, and Mrs. D. Goss, we were able to establish the Judge Stephen S. Goss Award, recognizing leadership by judges and psychiatrists who go beyond business as usual to make a real impact in their communities, in their states, and nationally. And part of the goal with this award is to show the many ways that leadership shows up and recognize the people around the country who are every day doing something extra. Each year, we welcome nominations from anyone for judges or psychiatrists to be considered for the Judge Goss Award. We have a national selection committee of judges, psychiatrists, and people with lived experience who review the nominations. We have a thoughtful, detailed conversation about what is always an incredible group of people. It is one of truly the most inspiring things I get to do in my job is to read about what so many judges and psychiatrists are doing around the country to think differently, go the extra mile to help people. We are thrilled to be here today to recognize 2 judges and 2 psychiatrists as 2025 Judge Goss Leadership Award winners. 2 of those are Lifetime Achievement Awards. For the first award, I'd like to welcome Judge Leifman back to introduce our first winner.
Thank you. This is a special honor for me. While I was not on the selection committee, she definitely would have been one of my, if not first choices, to receive this recognition, because I have had the honor and pleasure of working with Dr. Catherine Warburton for many, many years now. She runs and is the medical director for the largest forensic inpatient system in the United States, and that is the California Department of State Hospitals. But what makes her so unique is that she doesn't just go in and try to do her job every day. She recognizes that the overuse, overrepresentation, overutilization of competency restoration facilities as maybe some people think an alternative to treatment, is all wrong. And so she is involved in academic research. She is involved heavily at the state level in California, trying to reform laws and working with the courts and the judges to make sure they're educated about these laws. And she is working both around the United States and internationally to get the best research, the best information to create the best system that is possible. We had the opportunity to travel together as part of a delegation to visit the Trieste, Italy mental health system, where it was a real eye-opener for all of us because it was a reinforcement and a validation that we can do things differently. I think she almost fell out of her chair when we went to the forensic hospital in Trieste, and there were only 2 patients because they have learned how to do a much better job of keeping people out of the criminal justice system than we have. She's a visionary. She's a pioneer. She's one of the few people I've met that's trying to get out of the job that she has by keeping people out of the forensic system and into the treatment system. She is one of my world heroes, and I'm just amazed every day that her depth, her breadth, her ability to understand complex systems and try to reform them in a way that makes access to treatment more affordable, easier to get to, and more competent so that people actually receive the level of care that they need so that they don't end up on our streets, they don't end up in our criminal justice system, they don't end up in our forensic hospitals. But at her core, her greatest goal is to make sure that individuals living with serious mental illnesses have a full life of hope and opportunity, and not a life that all of us know isn't healthy for any of us. I also had the pleasure of serving with Dr. Warburton on SAMHSA's Interdepartmental Serious Mental Illness Coordinating Committee, also known as ISMAC, which unfortunately was unceremoniously dismantled under this recent administration. But again, working with her in that capacity, she always brought great ideas, great thoughtfulness, and always a commitment to doing the right thing and improving our systems. She is involved in too many boards and too many organizations to name them all, but all of them have a wonderful focus on reforming our system, improving our civil commitment system, and again, making sure that people have access to good care so that they stay out of these systems. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. Catherine Warburton, one of the 2025 Stephen S. Goss Award recipients. Thank you, Dr. Warburton. Wonderful to see you.
Thank you, Judge Leifman. It's particularly humbling to receive such an award from someone such as yourself, and to receive this award named after someone like Judge Stephen Goss. So thank you. I recognize so many of you as collaborators and friends and mentors and people who've inspired my work throughout my career. And so it's particularly meaningful to get an award from psychiatrists, judges, people with lived experience who are working to decriminalize serious mental illnesses. And I can only just thank you for honoring the work that we all do together today. So thank you very much.
I wish I was in person to be able to hand you the actual award, but hopefully I'll see you soon, and if not, we will make sure you receive it soon. Thank you, and congratulations again.
Congratulations. I'd like to welcome another one of our JPLI co-chairs, Dr. Sarah Vincent, to introduce the next winner.
Good evening or afternoon, everybody, depending on where you are. Always glad to be with the JPLI folks. And today is a special day as we're honoring just tremendous work by colleagues across the country. And I have the privilege of presenting the award to Judge Luke Bartow. And Judge Luke Bartow is the district judge for the Cherokee Nation District Court, and he grounds his work in Cherokee values, culture, and traditions, and in improving outcomes for people involved in the criminal justice system who have behavioral health needs. Since his appointment in 2017, Judge Bartow has led transformative initiatives that emphasize treatment, healing, and cultural understanding over punitive measures. He established the Cherokee Nation's first Veterans Treatment Court and implemented forensic mental health services that integrate behavioral health care into the justice process. Under his leadership, the Healing to Wellness Court and restorative diversion programs have expanded access to rehabilitation and culturally responsive support. Judge Bartow's collaborative approach, partnering with mental health professionals, tribal leaders, and community advocates, focuses on addressing the root causes of criminal behavior while strengthening community trust in the courts. His commitment to therapeutic justice, holistic healing, and cultural preservation inspires meaningful reform across Indian country. Congratulations, Judge.
Thank you. And I'm deeply honored to receive this award, and I do so on behalf of everyone at Cherokee Nation who's worked tirelessly to improve behavioral health and rehabilitation within our court system. Specifically, I'd like to thank Principal Chief Hoskin, Deputy Chief Warner, and the Tribal Council for sharing the court's vision of designing a justice system based on alternatives to the traditional penal system. In the judiciary, we see every day how untreated mental health challenges and substance use disorders affect individuals, families, and communities. Our responsibility not only to uphold the law, but to ensure justice is fair, compassionate, and rooted in belief that people can change when given the right support. The progress that we've made here, expanding treatment access, strengthening diversion programs, and building pathways that focus on healing rather than punishment, has been the work of many. I'm grateful to our court staff, behavioral health teams, law enforcement partners, and community organizations who continue to show that collaboration can transform lives. This recognition is a reminder that our efforts matter. It reaffirms our commitment to the justice system that restores dignity, promotes rehabilitation, and promotes every individual with the opportunity to succeed. And I just want to thank you again for this honor, and thank you for believing in the mission of a more humane and effective justice system. Thank you.
Congratulations, Judge. I'd like to welcome Justice Catherine Zenoff, another one of our JPLI co-chairs, for the next award.
Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome all of you here this afternoon and this evening. I sit on the 4th District Appellate Court in Illinois and have been very honored to serve as co-chair for many years. It is a distinct honor this evening to present a Lifetime Achievement Award to Chief Justice Deborah Hembry Lambert. Chief Justice Deborah Hembry Lambert has been a driving force for improving court responses to persons with behavioral health needs for many years. Through her vision and her compassion, she has positioned Kentucky as a national leader in judicially driven behavioral health reform. As an early champion of Kentucky's drug court program, Chief Justice Lambert has long promoted treatment-focused alternatives to incarceration or foster care. In 2022, she established Kentucky's Judicial Commission on Mental Health, a first-of-its-kind initiative helping to expand responses to mental health needs and improve competency processes. Under her guidance, this entity has aligned its work with resolutions passed by the Conference of Chief Justices and the Conference of State Court Administrators to improve the justice system's response to people with serious mental illness. She has also helped expand court-based behavioral health liaison positions and mental health courts, as well as secure legislation such as CES law, which address competency evaluation backlogs. She has certainly and does deserve this Lifetime Achievement Award. And before hearing from the Chief Justice, I would like to ask Danielle Hirsch of the National Center for State Courts to say a few words as well.
Thank you very much, Justice Zinoff, and congratulations, Chief Justice Lambert. On behalf of the National Center for State Courts, we want to thank you for your dedication to state courts and to behavioral health. Your work has not only improved the lives of Kentuckians, but the lives of many of us from across the country. Your leadership leaves a lasting impact, empowering colleagues, shaping court culture, and producing results that endure. Kentucky's courts remain a place of understanding, healing, and hope, breaking cycles that have long trapped people with behavioral health needs. We look forward to all of your great work yet to come, and thank you for all you've done. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you, Judge Zinoff, and also for your kind remarks, Danielle. And hello from snowy Kentucky. I am so honored to receive this award and to learn all I have learned recently of Judge Stephen Goss makes it even more meaningful to me. And I very much appreciate this extra focus and recognition of the work that we're doing here in Kentucky. It's certainly not a singular task, and it takes a concentrated focus by so very many people, and they're a part of this day too. This award touches a very personal part of my own story. I grew up very modestly in the mountains of Eastern Kentucky, where community, compassion, and dignity shape the people and how we care for each other. And in a very personal way, I have often tried to model the caring adults that I needed and that I also actually had in my own life as a child. So those values have guided me along the way and the way I approach the work, and remind me every day that every person has a story that matters very much, and that story is to be valued. There's power in collaboration, and to collaborate, we have to listen to each other. That philosophy has also shaped my own work. And I think that we cannot improve our outcomes if we only see charges or case numbers. We have to see people, and we have to see families, and we must understand that the long-term impact of compassion is so positive within our justice system. I want to thank the judges, attorneys, psychiatrists, clinicians, court staff, law enforcement, and community partners here in Kentucky who share this mission with me. I'm especially grateful to the Administrative Office of the Courts and the Kentucky Judicial Commission on Mental Health for their dedication and partnership. But most importantly, I want to acknowledge the individuals and families who live with behavioral health challenges. Their voices are guiding our work and remind us why collaboration between justice, behavioral health, and community systems is actually essential. Kentucky has made meaningful strides, and there's still much to do, but I remain hopeful because of the people who continue to show up with their new ideas, their commitment, and their heart. Thank you again for this honor. I share it with the people of Kentucky, with my colleagues, and with the community that raised me. I look forward to learning more about what can be done here and collaborating with our fellow Kentuckians and experts from all over the country as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Congratulations, Chief Justice Lambert. I'd like to welcome Justice Zinoff back to introduce our next winner.
Thank you. It is really my privilege to highlight and present the Lifetime Achievement Award to Dr. Deborah Pinos, someone I've had the privilege of knowing and working with for many years. Dr. Deborah Pinos is widely recognized for her leadership in substance use law and policy, civil commitment, law enforcement mental health response, crisis systems, competency restoration, and architectural design of forensic facilities and correctional mental health services. As Michigan's Medical Director of Behavioral Health and Forensic Programs for the Department of Health and Human Services, and Director of the Program in Psychiatry, Law, and Ethics at the University of Michigan Medical School, she leads statewide efforts to strengthen diversion, reentry, and treatment partnerships. She also co-developed Mission Criminal Justice, a wraparound model supporting people in the justice system with co-occurring disorders. Dr. Pinos has served as chair of NASHFID's Forensic Division and currently serves as senior medical and forensic advisor and editor-in-chief. She has also served as chair of the Council on Psychiatry and the Law for the American Psychiatric Association. Before I turn this over to Dr. Champion for a couple personal words, I would like to share with you extremely briefly Dr. Pinos' appearance first in October 2019. From that date, the Midwest Regional Convening in Deadwood, South Dakota, where we all focused on improving state court response to persons with mental illness, to Illinois' Mental Health Task Force, the virtual summit at which Dr. Pinos taught and appeared in October 2020 and spoke about system responses, to her appearance in September 2024 at our competency convening in Chicago. Dr. Pinos kept us not only engaged, but honestly spellbound with her approach, her advice, and her wisdom. And for that, we are eternally grateful. Dr. Champion?
Aloha. My name is Michael Champion. I'm a clinical forensic psychiatrist based in Hawaii, and I'm very privileged to be one of the co-chairs of the JPLI, and also privileged to be here today, recognizing the excellent work of judges and psychiatrists in this critical area of work. I'd like to say a few comments about Dr. Pinos. I have known Dr. Pinos since the late 90s when I was a trainee in Massachusetts, and I was trying to find my way through a complicated landscape of health and medicine and intersection with justice, and trying to find meaningful pathways to be of service. And Dr. Pinos, I think, is a shining example of that. And so my brief comments are based on almost 30 years of knowing Dr. Pinos personally and professionally, and knowing her impact on the field. The bio that was just shared indicates that Dr. Pinos has national leadership in a number of different areas. And I just want to affirm that all of that is very accurate and more. Dr. Pinos is a shining example of what it means to be an impactful leader. And I have just personal knowledge of her impact on our field in the American Psychiatric Association, within NASHPID, as a forensic division chair, and also now a consultant. But also one item that's not on the agenda or on the program is that she also serves as the medical director for the American Academy of Psychiatry and the Law. And that means that she has the opportunity to have a major impact on the field of forensic psychiatry and people who are coming into the field as trainees. And I recall back, I believe it was in 2013, in her presidential speech to address the members of Apple, she really laid a groundbreaking vision of the role of forensic psychiatrists in understanding and working in complex systems and policy and clinical services and redesigning the system. And from my perspective, she is very much responsible for a very important, significant turning of the curve in our national profession. I'll end with saying that Dr. Puddles has been a mentor, a friend, and a cherished colleague to me and hundreds, if not thousands, of others in our field of mental health and psychiatry, but also within the judiciary in the field of law. She's tireless in all of the good ways, a shining light and a true way shower. So I end with saying, congratulations, Dr. Pinels, on the Lifetime Achievement Award. It's ironic because I know there's much more to come. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Judge Zinoff. The pleasure was all and has been all mine to work with you. You have been such a delight. And of course, Dr. Champion, yes, I didn't realize how much time has gone by since we first met, but ditto, you have been such a shining star yourself and a true colleague and absolutely a true friend through thick and thin. So I want to thank CSG and the American Psychiatric Foundation, Hallie, who's also been somebody I've worked with for a long time, and others, Judge Leifman, the entire JPLI selection committee for giving me the honor of this award. I also had the privilege of knowing Judge Goss, and this award is especially meaningful to me as his passing was something that had a profound impact, but his life had an even greater impact on so many of us, and you could hear that from the words that were spoken before. It is so important to see that being a person who really paid things forward, that this award reflects his legacy and the ongoing work that he set in motion as well. Being beloved, as one of my sons says, is the legacy that is the most important for all of us. And he certainly meets that criteria for sure. As for me, I just want to say a few words again, of gratitude. I always have to start with the shoulders that I stand on, and that is my family. I stand on the shoulders of immigrants who came to the United States under duress and adversity, and then showed me the way. My parents, who had tremendous integrity and work ethic. My father, who passed, may he rest in peace, and my mother, who's on this meeting watching me and has been my champion throughout, my siblings as well, all with integrity, work ethic, and drive that you wouldn't believe it, but I'm sort of the runt of the litter in comparison to all of them. And I really have leaned on them throughout, and they are who make me strong every day. My children as well have supported me. It's hard to believe how much I've accomplished while also raising a family. I'm so proud of my children every day for the work that they do, and they also live with integrity and the gift of communication and hard work. And I get so much joy from watching all of that. So I just want to thank all of those supporters. I started this journey in a way that no one would have ever guessed. People ask me how I got to this point in my career, and I say, it was just a series of happenstance things. I didn't plan this out to be in this. Nowadays, people come to train and they want to do policy and they want to do this work. I didn't even know this work that was available. I remember the first time when I wanted to do my residency and my fellowship in correctional settings. People in my family, even though they're physicians and psychiatrists, were a little surprised. But, that was the path I took, and I never looked back. I saw the plight of the people that ended up in the criminal system, and I knew that they were the same people that I saw in the emergency room at different points in their life. I knew that they were people I took care of in outpatient clinics and in inpatient psychiatric units. And yet, once they came in contact with the criminal system, everything seemed different, everything for them. And so it has been really one of my professional life missions to help those individuals get on better paths. And I love the story of lived experience we heard before. That's the story that I aim for every day when I think about policies and practices that we need to do better with. The psychiatrists that we work with need to know the path that people have taken and the ability that they have to turn their lives around and make positive changes in their lives through our help and through our guidance and in partnership with our judicial colleagues. I could not have had the career that I have had without the deep collegial relationships that I have built along the way with so many judges that I have worked with. And so many things. Chief Justice Paula Carey, the late Harry Spence, who helped me when I was in Massachusetts forge a pathway to specialty courts, build out further reentry services through administrative leads. And then in Michigan through Judge Mack, who's on this call, and others who really have helped develop partnerships between the mental health system, the behavioral health system, and the judicial system. Through those partnerships, I believe we can create change. We don't always see eye to eye. We often speak different languages and come from different vantage points, but through our partnerships, I believe that we can continue to push the fields forward to do better by the individuals that we're all trying to serve so that we can have safer communities and better opportunities for people who, through no fault of their own, end up with mental illnesses, substance use disorders, who may have intellectual or developmental disabilities and traumatic brain injuries, and end up in the criminal system. So with that, I just want to thank the awards committee again. And you're right, Michael, there's more work to do. I intend to continue to do it. This is a Lifetime Achievement Award for this part of my life. I hope that we can continue to partner and work together going forward because there are many more lives to save. So thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pinels. Congratulations. And I hope our audience at home will join with me in congratulating all of our honorees this year. It's an extraordinary set of experiences, passion, dedication to improving the lives of people in their community. So congratulations to all of you. Your awards are in the mail. And we look forward to you having that as a tangible reminder of the legacy that you carry forward. Each year we pair the Judge Goss Award with a policy conversation where the expertise of judges and psychiatrists is uniquely important. Prior conversations have covered competency to stand trial, the Chief Justice-led state task forces, and judicial education on behavioral health. The JPLI has a new advisory group. I see some of you in the audience today. And with their guidance, involuntary treatment quickly rose to the top of pressing issues for this year's discussion. We are under no illusions that we will resolve this in under an hour. Even those two words, involuntary and treatment, have prompted numerous conversations and questions from our experts to ask us to focus in on what we're talking about. Inpatient, outpatient, medication over objection. Are we talking about mental health and/or substance use? Are we talking about legal standards, clinical best practices? And the answer is yes. With more and more states considering and passing legislation that touches on involuntary treatment under all of those, within all those categories, we'd like to have a conversation here that starts to unpack what we know about involuntary treatment and what best positions it for success. We'd like to here lean in on the expertise of judges and psychiatrists, as well as people with lived experience, to talk through some of these considerations. Before we begin, I would like to recognize out loud that this is a topic that can elicit very strong, heartfelt reactions. Whether it's a parent desperately trying to get an adult child treatment when that child does not believe anything is wrong, or a person who feels that their most precious individual liberty Their right to decide what happens to their own body has been violated. There are valid and righteous reasons people feel strongly about this topic. We hope that at the end of our time together, you've heard something new or considered something you already knew from a new angle. For us, this is a first conversation for JPLI on this complex and truly heartfelt topic. And we intend to continue working on it, creating additional resources, fostering additional conversations in the time ahead. Today's panel brings together a judge, a psychiatrist, and a researcher whose work is grounded in personal and family experience, giving us some important vantage points on this topic. We'll welcome back Dr. Pinels, who you just met, as well as welcome Judge Milt Mack and Dr. Nev Jones to the panel. Judge Mack, is the state court administrator emeritus for the Michigan Supreme Court and chair of the Michigan Governor's Mental Health Diversion Council. He wrote the policy paper, Decriminalization of Mental Illness, Fixing a Broken System, which helped lead to the establishment of the National Judicial Task Force to examine the state court's response to mental illness, where he served as a co-chair from 2019 to 2020. Throughout his more than 30-year career, Judge Mack has advised numerous advocacy organizations, including the National Shattering Silence Coalition, consistently championing more equitable and effective treatment for people with serious mental illnesses. He is also a former recipient of the Judge Goss Award. Dr. Nev Jones is an associate professor at the University of Pittsburgh School of Social Work, and she is an interdisciplinary mental health services researcher. Her work centers the experiences of people with lived experiences and includes a focus on both inpatient and outpatient commitment. She is currently co-leading a statewide state-mandated evaluation of Kendra's law and assisted outpatient treatment across New York State. So welcome, Dr. Pinels, Judge Mack, Dr. Jones. Thank you so much for joining us. Just to get things started, I'd love to talk about what brings you a little bit to this conversation. What are some of the values, experiences, or obligations that shape the way you approach involuntary treatment in your work? Judge Mack, can I start with you?
All right, well, for me, it's justice. I served as a probate judge for 25 years. I heard thousands of mental health cases, and I saw the same people over and over again. It didn't seem to me the system was working well at all. I served on the Mental Health Commission, and we basically found that the system was an inpatient model in an outpatient world. We need to change the system and not respond just in the case of crisis. So many of the individuals with mental illness, we know, end up in jail. If we had good civil treatment system, maybe that wouldn't happen. And so that's what has driven me, because I think treatment of people early in the course of the illness restores their capacity to make their own decisions. So for me, it's justice.
Thank you, Judge. Dr. Pinels, can I go to you next to talk a little bit about the values, experiences, or professional roles that shape the way you approach involuntary treatment?
Yeah, I think for me, the roles have been, anything from a treating clinician to a forensic evaluator to a policymaker and a state leader, which give you different perspectives on how this needs to play out. And having worked with Judge Mack on refining our outpatient commitment statute in Michigan and watching how it's being implemented, the values, I would say, really are about maximizing engagement and maximizing the opportunities for voluntary care, and thinking about who and when involuntary treatment is for, and recognizing that it is not necessarily a long-term strategy or solution, nor is it the solution for everyone, because there's so many factors that kind of go into what do we mean by involuntary treatment. There's also the fallacy that all treatments can even be administered involuntarily, and that's not correct. So I think, the values are, how do we maximize positive treatment that people value, so that we don't have to resort to involuntary and only use it when necessary and for the right people.
Bones, same question for you.
Thanks. I think that I would just agree overall that it's a question of justice. What motivates me is the extreme brokenness of systems and services in the US when it comes in particular to individuals who would be generally labeled with long-term serious mental illness. Profound injustice that sort of we as a society perpetrate and sustain through policies that by and large do not improve outcomes, criminalize unnecessarily, and really reinforce rather than fundamentally transform poverty. And poverty, I think, often shapes everything that we're talking about, including civil commitment. So it's about doing justice to people that society has not done justice to in a really profound way.
Thank you. Dr. Jones, can I stay with you for the next question? From your perspective, from the research that you've done, are there conditions? If so, what conditions make involuntary treatment most likely to help someone? And what circumstances make it more likely to cause harm or mistrust?
That is a really challenging question. I think what I would start by saying is really kind of distinguishing the letter of the law from what actually happens in the real world. And I think when we look at statute, often it appears that criteria are narrower than they are or would be enforced in a narrower way. What we often see in the real world is that the net of involuntary treatment becomes very expansive, whether we're talking inpatient or outpatient. And many people are swept up in that net. The impacts, the potential harms are not only at the individual level, but ripple across systems. So when providers and administrators come to view people as fundamentally dangerous, view them in terms of risk, that doesn't only impact the individual or individuals who end up experiencing some form of civil commitment, but it impacts the entire way in which systems, providers, and services are responding to people with certain diagnoses or labels. And resource allocation is something I really want to highlight, where we put resources and where we don't. So I think I kind of start there, because I think when it comes to the potential harms of civil commitment, we generally tend to see emphasis on benefits over harms. Harms tend to be emphasized by service users and advocates with lived experience who have very little political or structural power. And so I would really emphasize that considerable potential for harm, not just potential, it is real harm, but it is also, if we are thinking about kind of policy in futural terms, it is always potential as well. And I'll leave it to others to speak to what they see as benefits.
Dr. Jones, maybe Judge Mack, I'll go over to you. You were talking about efforts in Michigan to, to have that be narrowly tailored and precise, so it isn't involuntary treatment isn't sweeping people up who shouldn't be And so, sort of same question, are there conditions that make involuntary treatment more likely to help, or are there conditions that make it more likely to harm? How have you thought about that from your perspective as a judge and as somebody involved in state policy conversations?
Well, I would say that involuntary hospitalization is a traumatic event. The police arrive at your house, seize you, handcuff you, drag you out of the house in front of the neighbors, throw you in the back of a squad car, haul you off to a hospital, kidnap. You're held hostage in the hospital waiting to see a judge. I can't imagine that that's a pleasant experience. On the other hand, assisted outpatient treatment is a whole different approach. And, I agree with Dr. Piles. I mean, the Mental Health Commission recommended that we have a integrated hierarchy of choice. Like you're always trying to get the person to make their own decisions. And we're working on that. But I will say that Michigan has expanded AOT tremendously. AOT is almost a standard relief in a petition for involuntary treatment in Michigan because we have basically two standards. One standard for AOT, one standard for hospitalization. Standard for hospitalization is higher. So, for example, we're probably a little Genesee County, 800 people on AOT and a population of 400,000. So we actually have a study that's released this last month. We studied Calhoun County, a small rural county in Michigan. They followed 46 people on AOT who had a history of hospitalization and to see how they did over a 4-year period of time. And the results were impressive. Psychiatric inpatient hospital days dropped by nearly 82%. Arrests dropped to 0. Stable housing was maintained for 83%. Adherence to medication protocols was almost 90%. So what we're seeing is when AOT is being implemented and people are properly engaged, they like the treatment. They prefer it. They certainly prefer the hospitalization. I never got a thank you from someone I sent to a hospital. I can tell you that for sure. Maybe one time, but otherwise, no.
Thank you, Judge Mack. Can you talk a little, you mentioned if people are being properly engaged. Can you talk a little bit about what that would look like in your mind?
Well, for example, Genesee County, when someone is ordered onto AOT, the first thing they do is send a letter to the individual saying, a treatment team is going to guide your care. You're on the treatment team. And one of the things we're also trying to do in Michigan is to expand the use of mediation. We have it now, but we want to expand it so that anyone can ask for mediation. Because we know that clinicians don't like to petition their patients because of that patient-client relationship, So with mediation, if you have someone who's starting to falter a bit, you can say, look, well, how about we try mediation? Michigan has set up community dispute resolutions across the entire state. We have a mental health mediation program in place. We've trained 100 mediators in how to handle this sort of thing. And we are currently sending cases to mediation involving mental health issues. And this gives an opportunity for the individual to have a real role in choosing their care. But the one thing we know about mediation is it works because it's been their choice, their decision. The mediator doesn't give a decision or even suggest one if they do it right. So, if we can engage people, if we take the 18,000 petitions that are filed every year, a substantial number sign in voluntarily or they defer along the way, and only about 40% end up in front of a judge. And in those cases, orders are usually entered, and then it's off to the CMH. But I don't know, does that help?
Thank you. And Dr. Pinels, can I ask you to talk a little bit from a clinical perspective as well as, from your work in Massachusetts and Michigan at the national level? What would you want our audience to know from your perspective about what conditions make involuntary treatment more likely to help someone or more likely to cause harm?
Well, we did a lot of there was a lot of early research that talked about, initial encounters with psychiatry and engaging people in care and giving forced medications in the emergency room, and what that would mean for long-term adherence, that if their early experiences were negative, that it would make it more scary and more difficult for people to engage long-term. Now we know that for first episode psychosis, coordinated specialty care is a really strong way, an evidence-based way to wrap services around people, help them get into jobs when they're first experiencing psychotic conditions. So I think it's a really good lesson around trying to keep people getting the care that they want, even when their illnesses might tell them otherwise. They might be scared, they might be paranoid about the medications, they might have other kinds of things going on in their minds where they're not really seeing the treatment system as an ally. And if the treatment system doesn't act respectfully or coordinated, then they're not being an ally in the person's joining the person. So I loved what Judge Max said about, making that person know that they're part of the team. They're not part of the team. It's their team. It's their care. And that's a really important thing. Also, the idea of who needs involuntary treatment, again, first of all, I would say, what treatment are we talking about? Because there's anything from a court order saying you must adhere to all sorts of things, like going to your groups and living in a certain place and, showing up for appointments and taking your medicine, to the kind of involuntary treatment that involves actually holding people and giving them medications that they don't want in their bodies. And there's different things that when we talk about involuntary treatment, I don't think we're talking about the same thing always. And that's one of the problems. We talk about it globally. In the same way, when we talk about why people are not willing to take treatment, I mean, there's any number of reasons. It could be their side effects. It could be they didn't understand the instructions. It could be that, they are, willful about not wanting it. It could be that they're just like me with, give me 10 days of an antibiotic and you're lucky if I get to day 7 without stopping, missing a dose. So it could be just accidental. It could be, that they get confused about which pills on which days, which, anybody who takes more than one pill a day can get. So I feel like we don't do a good enough job really understanding, for somebody not showing up for appointments, do they not have bus fare? Do they not have transportation? I literally was in a sliding car accident yesterday with a person. The person in front of me was a person with mental health issues, potentially. Seemed like he said he had some. He's not going to have a car potentially, or the access to a car to get to an appointment. We both slipped on ice on black ice, and it was one of these happenstance things. But just thinking about his experience and mine, like, I don't have a car and he doesn't have a car. How I'm a person of means who can take an Uber. I'm not sure he will be able to do that. So we really have to understand what's going on in people's lives that they're not showing up. And as we heard, a lot of this is based on poverty. So before we jump to involuntary, we have to say involuntary what? We also have to realize, like, not all medications can be administered involuntarily, and not all things, like, I've been in conversations where people, unfortunately, sometimes I see, of different professions, they want people mandated to attend their groups. Well, you can't necessarily make somebody sit in a chair. You can't make them, and if they do attend their groups because they're forced to, are they talking? You can't make them talk. Like, so are they going to get the benefit of the group that you want them to attend? So it's not as simple. I mean, yes, a court order can help some people who respond to court orders, but not everybody will respond to a court order. And if they would, everybody on probation, there would never be violations of probation, ever. So we know that even in the best of circumstances, not everybody responds to that. So we have to work with people. And I think probation officers are learning about motivational interviewing, just like mental health professionals are. And that's not the only thing that works either. That's not a magic solution. So I guess what I'm saying to you, Hallie, is the question is one with a complex, nothing people ask about these systems issues are easy, and there's complex solutions to complex problems.
I thank all three of you for sort of laying out a landscape here and also creating some landmarks for us around the, concern about sweeping people in who aren't intended. It shouldn't be broad. We should have a clear idea about what we're talking about and also really thoughtful ways of engaging people, sort of regardless of profession. Um, Judge Mack, I'd like to come back to you for your experience when you were sitting in court or are sitting in court now, again, it sounds like, or other judges you've spoken with. What is important for judges to know or do when involuntary treatment is on the table? And I'm using the term broadly on purpose, so please feel free to add whatever nuances you think are important. But a judge is hearing a case, and it seems like the question of involuntary treatment comes up.
Well, actually, as a probate judge, the petition I'm hearing is one for involuntary treatment. It always is. And the question is how you handle it. It's important, number one, for the judge to actually know the law. And that is a problem. We've had judges who aren't working well with the CMH or the hospitals, because I get those complaints. But as a judge, see, in Michigan, our philosophy is we enter the order for AOT, it goes to CMH. CMH is to prepare the actual treatment plan, and then we stand by in case of trouble. We don't intervene and have review hearings unless there's a need to have one. So, for example, in the Calhoun County cases I mentioned, you've got 90% compliance. So there's no need for that treatment plan to be filed with the probate court. For those who are non-compliant, then we can have a hearing, but it's a small number. And I know that in Genesee County, what the judge does is she brings the individual in to have a conversation about what's going on, and basically has that black robe conversation to get things back on track again. So Michigan's approach is a little different. So when I'm hearing the case, I'm just deciding, is this a person who meets the criteria under the statute? And Michigan has changed the statute. So, for example, a recent case in the Court of Appeals, the doctor testified at the trial that the respondent was not currently at risk of harm. However, he had a long history of decompensation, and he predicted the individual would stop his treatment within 3 to 6 months and would be at risk of suicide, substance abuse, dementia, and so forth. And the Court of Appeals approved or affirmed the decision to order treatment. So we're looking forward and looking backward. Another case, the individual had punched a police officer a couple of years earlier. And they said, well, that's an act that supports the expectation that it'll happen again based on his current condition. So we've made things different so you can get in the courthouse, and then if treatment is ordered, you're going to the psychiatrist, and the psychiatrist will determine what happens next. But so our role is simply to decide, are you a person who requires treatment? And judges are not, in our philosophy, judges don't decide what the treatment is. We do prepare the authorization, but it's up to the psychiatrist to actually prepare the plan that can be enforced.
Seems like a natural transition to Dr. Pinels. Dr. Pinels, from a clinical perspective, how do clinicians or how should clinicians balance different considerations around involuntary treatment? And again, I heard you earlier say, that's a huge umbrella, Hallie. Be more specific. But what are some of the things that a clinician should be thinking about, or a judge should understand a clinician is thinking about? And I know one of the questions that has come up has been for people who don't have insight into their illness or who don't believe they do have an illness. How do you think about that from a clinical perspective, thinking about various types of involuntary treatment as tools?
Yeah. So first of all, I think the first thing that we have to do, just like Judge Mack said, the judges have to do, is we have to, as psychiatrists, we have to understand the laws, due process, and the limits of the laws, and use our knowledge to help explain when we testify as experts about what we understand. So we as psychiatrists are trained very early on in our careers how to make an assessment of somebody's capacity to make treatment decisions. That's a very common kind of bread and butter evaluation that psychiatrists learn to do. And there's factors that we are taught about it, whether somebody has the capacity or is competent to give informed consent. And so that's going to be important for certain types of decisions. That evaluation is different than whether somebody meets civil commitment criteria. So, for example, you can have somebody that's perfectly clinically capable of making their own decisions, but they are still presenting a risk of harm. They may be suicidal, for example, and they understand the risks and benefits of treatment and hospitalization, but they don't want to be hospitalized, or they don't want to be under a court order because they really just want to kill themselves and they know what the risks are. And so the law does allow, this is one area where the law does allow, because of certain judicial philosophical principles, parents, patriae, and police powers, the ability to involuntarily order somebody into care, whether it's in a hospital or into a now community-based outpatient treatment, depending on whether they meet the criteria. But, even in 1845, the Supreme Judicial Court, in the case of in the matter of Josiah Oakes, said, and I'm not going to get the quote exactly right, but the law that allows us to commit also gives us the limits of the law, which says that we need to be mindful that this is not just, a broad sweeping ability to force people into things that they don't want to be forced into. There has to be due process. There has to be rights that are afforded to people. And these are populations that have historically not had rights afforded to them. So clinically, we have to understand how to do these assessments and understand what the laws allow and what the laws don't allow. And then, when it comes before judges, we have to be very clear about that so that the judges hear our testimony clearly.
Thank you both. Dr. Jones, from your research, recognizing that we have an audience out there of judges and psychiatrists who will be doing their best to apply the law to individual cases, what would you want them to know from your research? Obviously you're not going to tell them what the law is, but what would you want them to know about the body of research that comes from your work with community members and families?
Yeah, so I think there are very, very significant limitations to the way that we typically evaluate programs like AOT or other forms of involuntary outpatient treatment. We tend to systematically fail to measure real or potential harms, and even benefits are measured in a very reductionistic way. I regularly encounter narratives of people directly on AOT orders and their family that are heartbreaking. And I thought I will try to read this quickly. I thought I would read one quote from a parent that I interviewed a couple of weeks ago. She was like a shining star to be, like I say, she won so many awards academically, so to see her be a bright shining star and then to see the star falling out of the sky just so fast. I mean, she's going to turn 37 in like a week or so. And she's 225 pounds at 5'3". Her legs look like tree stumps. They've literally ruined her. They've ruined the person that I knew and turned her into really an addict of prescription medications and the ramifications of the weight and the hormones. And she has osteoporosis because her bones aren't getting any estrogen, because they've basically given her medical menopause so that she can't have a child. Her liver is hurting. She literally takes bottles of Pepto-Bismol a week. I get that they don't want to be made fools out of with the AOT, and they want to say, well, look, we kept her out of the hospital for 2 years now. Yeah, but you're medicating her so much that she can hardly move. She can't tie her own shoes because she's so big. You're not giving her any quality of life at all. Stories like this is not an exception or an outlier. This is what we are frequently encountering, and this is not somebody who is an anti-psychiatry activists. They get most of their communications from the Treatment Advocacy Center. This is a parent who is completely and utterly heartbroken by what the system, in this case AOT, has done to her child. That we allow things like this to happen as a society is unconscionable to me. And I think sometimes very well-intentioned members of the public, family who maybe have not had direct experience, will think, oh, this is bringing quality of life to my child, or this is, I'm walking down the street in the subway, I see people who are suffering, who are abandoned. And more than anything, I want them to get good things to happen to them. I want them to get services and supports. But I think we really have to take stock very, very deeply of what really happens to people. And it is a very complicated, messy, and far, 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 I think, from the idealized picture we often have. People on AOT orders are more often than not living in absolute and utter poverty. We have not lifted them into flourishing and restored lives in the community. And physical health, as we see in this quote, is an extreme concern, most often due to effects of medications or certainly compounded by effects of medication. So I think really, really taking stock in a very deep way of what actually happens to people, which is not numbers in terms of reduced hospitalizations or arrests. It is what are people's lives really like, and are we really comfortable with that as a society? And if we're not, the many, many things that we should be doing from a policy and service perspective to actually transform lives.
Thank you, Dr. Jones. Maybe I'm going to go back to Judge Mack. Actually, can I have both Judge Mack and Dr. Pinels for the Michigan story? I love the magic of Zoom. So you're an example of a judge and a psychiatrist working together on a policy issue. Dr. Jones has just, given us a very vivid example of how awful things can go when they go wrong. Can you talk a little bit about, one, how you've worked together, and two, what are the things you're thinking about to prevent the sort of situation that Dr. Jones has seen in her research?
I always defer to Dr. Pinels.
I mean, I think one thing is coordination across the system. That's one of the things we're really seeing in Michigan as we're trying to roll out AOT implementation. It's a challenge. Judge Mack spoke about Genesee County and I think it was Calhoun County as examples that have done a really good job. It's not easy to roll out an AOT program that's got a coordinated effort, but that's going to be really important. Multidisciplinary involvement so that we can see, what's happening. We don't want the judges to order medications, for example, that the psychiatrists don't think are indicated. We don't, the judges aren't the psychiatrists aren't the judges. And so that is, making sure that there's communication and coordination, seeing if somebody's having problems with their treatment, whatever it is. You don't want to keep ordering something that's not working or that's causing harm. So those are things that I would say really coordination and communication, because we want somebody to be alerted if things aren't working well.
Right, and I think Dr. Piles is exactly correct. Um, it takes collaboration with the stakeholders, and it takes collection of data, to make sure the matters are being properly handled. So in Wayne County was trying to collect that kind of data. So for one of the things we do in Michigan, we have a thing called deferral. So what happens is a person is petitioned and they're in the hospital, then they schedule a deferment conference, which has a representative from the community mental health agency and the individual and their lawyer. And then if they work out a plan for treating and the person signs, then there's no hearing. And the case is adjourned without date. And if treatment is ongoing and working out and the CMH is satisfied, they don't come back to court. The problem we've had is implementation, overuse of deferrals. So, one or two deferrals that you violate, okay, fine. But if you've had 6 deferrals in the same year, then the system's not working very well. So we have to collect that kind of data. And so, but what I really think is we need benchmarks for performance by the providers. So as courts, we can measure fidelity to process. We cannot measure quality of service. I think about medicine. They have thousands of performance measures, but in mental health, we need better performance measures. We need to say, this works, this doesn't work. If you're doing this, you're doing a good job. If you're doing that, you're not doing a good job. I think the lack of good performance measures is a handicap. I mean, the process, I know the one thing I read somewhere, it says, having a strong moral belief in doing something is great, but you need a system in place to make it effective. And one of the things we've lacked systemness in this process. And I've long believed that if you want to reduce the number of people in prison and jails and hospitals with mental illness, then get to them early before they get in trouble. In Michigan, we run about 200,000 people per year in psychiatric emergencies in our emergency rooms. And this generates 18,000 petitions, but most of the petitions that are taken to the hospital don't get filed. So we estimate maybe 50,000 incidents a year of a person who presents in an emergency room who really desperately needs help, and they're not being handled properly. They're not being directed to CMH, for example. So we have some legislation pending right now that would bring real clarity to the role of judges and doctors. Now, I have a JD, not an MD, and I should understand that. I don't prescribe medication. I shouldn't tell the doctor what medication to take. So there's a provision in the bill that says that. And I can tell you my former colleagues in the probate court are not happy with me for putting that in there because they want to be able to do that. Well, they shouldn't do that, so.
Long license, Your Honor. No, that makes good sense. I knew it was a tall order for a short panel, but I really appreciate what each of you has contributed. I know we've had some questions in the chat that we're not going to be able to get to around funding and crisis services, both topics that we could do a whole other conversation on and probably will. But
Haley, could I ask one more thing, just briefly? Dr. Schwartz, you mentioned here, he really knows a lot about AOT, and I read a recent paper where he talked about the mental health court model versus the probate court model. So we don't have a mental health court model in probate court because the volume is so huge. So the probate court is a different animal. And that's it. No more interruption.
Thank you. No, appreciate it. We scratched the surface. Please join me in thanking Dr. Jones, Dr. Pinels, Judge Mack for sharing their perspectives. A couple of additional resources to continue sort of exploring this. We have a Q&A with Dr. Marvin Schwartz, who's done a bunch of research in this area. We also have 2 white papers that are put together that were part of the Conference of Chief Justices and Conference of State Court Administrators. The resources they released and endorsed. We also have a really interesting symposium or series of web meetings from the University of Washington Center for Mental Health Policy and the Law. Appreciate our advisory group members for identifying these resources and speakers and helping us start to explore this topic. Looking forward to continuing that conversation. To close, I'd like to welcome back Dr. Michael Champion and Judge Leifman to say a couple of words of farewell. And since this is my last moment, I will say thank you to everybody who has participated, to our panelists, to our staff, and again, huge congratulations to this year's winners.
Dr. Champion, would you like to go first?
Today's been a wonderful day to gather and recognize excellence in our work together in this very important intersection between mental health and justice. And so congratulations to everyone. And also thank you for everyone who has joined with us during this last hour and a half. In wrapping up, and also in the context of this being an award in the name of Judge Goss, we wanted just to add an element of the importance of keeping resilient in the work that we do, and a few comments about the importance of caring for ourselves. And I live in Hawaii, and one of the things that is a metaphor and a reality is what it's like to swim in big water. And it's a good metaphor for life, I think, that we all can relate to. When you're in big ocean, there's lots of waves, there's lots of changes, there's lots of currents. And in order for us to navigate that well, and again, you can tell I'm speaking in a metaphor for our lives every day, we need to build strength and conditioning and flexibility, not only physically, but mentally, emotionally. We need to practice, have support, have coaching, develop techniques to be able to enter the water. And I think the reality for all of us is that we're in big water every day in our lives, personally and professionally. And, we tend to think that we invest the time in training for, a sport or a task or what have you, but we also need to train for life, or our daily lives. And all of this is relevant to being able to keep healthy and well and resilient in our daily lives. And so just encouraging everyone to prioritize ourselves, certainly our families and our loved ones and the people that we serve in our professional roles, but most importantly, taking care of ourselves and prioritizing ourselves. And I believe we're going to provide some resources before the end of our wrap up for today. So thank you all for being here, and turn it over to Judge Leifman.
Thank you, Dr. Champion. And first, Hallie, thank you so much for moderating the panel. You did a phenomenal job, and you stayed on time, which is even more impressive. But it was really quite thought-provoking. I learned a lot. Very few people dropped off. I was watching because, and thank you, panelists, for just doing a phenomenal job. Very insightful. I do think, and I want to say, that often by the time someone ends up in the justice system with a serious mental illness, whether it is in the criminal system or the civil probate system, we've failed. And I think one of the biggest takeaways that we learned when we were in Trieste is they intervene so early. And if we realize and remember that these are illnesses like all illnesses, and the earlier there's intervention, the less likely there's going to be the kind of deficits and long-term damage to the brain. But for so many people in the United States, by the time they need civil commitment or they end up in the criminal justice system, they've been sick for decades. And it makes it much more difficult. And we end up with these horror stories where in Trieste, out of 40,000 patients in a community with 200,000 people, they filed 100 petitions last year, and they have very liberal civil commitment laws. It's that they deal with the underlying issues that we don't deal with. They get people housed immediately. They get them case managed. They get them into meaningful work immediately. And they work with people early so they're willing to take medication. And I think if we would revisit the way we approach our issues, we would end up with a much better system of care. I also want to congratulate all of our wonderful awardees, so well deserving, not just from the work that you've done over the many, many years, but for your willingness to spread such good information and help teach all of us the importance of making the changes and reforms that are so necessary to have a more effective system. And finally, I want to thank my co-chairs, Justice Senoff, Dr. Vincent, and Dr. Champion, for all that you do and for helping really promote the wonderful JPLI. Finally, if you look, there's more, if you want to get more information, how to join us, there's a link on the site. Please take a picture and please join us. Again, thank you all and congratulations to all the awardees, and have a wonderful evening, and thank you all so very much. Great job, Hallie and company. Thank you. It was really good. All right, we'll see you at our next meeting.
Guys,
Fantastic.
thank
Great
Thank you.
job. Thank you,
you so much.
guys. It was awesome.
Thank you. Be well.
Nice
Take
seeing you
care.
all.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Great to see you, Deb.
Yeah, you too.
Congrats.